morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, June 10th. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll have open line following the 10 and 11 o'clock news blocks. Patty Vandenberg will be joining us in about an hour with what's new around Holland. And in our third half hour, we'll have our monthly conversation with Ottawa County Sheriff's Lieutenant Designate Eric Westphayer of the Marine Unit. An opportune time to talk to him after what happened over the weekend in the waters of Lake Michigan off of Holland State Park. But in our first half hour, we have a chance to get caught up with some of the election issues and other issues involving the Ottawa County Clerk's office and the Register of Deeds with the Register of Deeds himself, of course, the Ottawa County Clerk, Justin Roebuck. He joins us via the Zoom connections. And Justin, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning. It's great to be with you, Gary.
Thank you very much for joining us. And I brought the Register of Deeds up first because more than anything else, we'd say Ottawa County Clerk Justin Roebuck. Hey, wait a minute, I got the Register of Deeds office too. And
exactly.
And there's been some interesting discussions along those lines. We have brought it up, and also your colleague in Allegan County, Bob Janetsky, has also brought it up as well about title fraud and trying to prevent that. And if we have time, we will revisit that subject. But first of all, I do need to get you caught up, or shall we say, get our listeners caught up with a story. And this is from our wire service copy. An investigation is underway after reports of voters in Georgia's largely minority counties being subjected to a variety of issues during the state's primary election yesterday. Residents complain of hour-long waits, issues with new voting machines, and a shortage of available ballots. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms tweeted about precincts not opening on time and machines malfunctioning across the state. The Secretary of State in Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, said the problems in counties such as Fulton and DeKalb were unacceptable, as his office will investigate how the regions can get things right before the November 3rd general election. As a local election official, that's a nightmare that apparently that happened in Georgia and hopefully will not happen in Michigan.
Yeah, definitely concerning stuff. And we were following the news a little bit, over the past couple of days in the Georgia election. Yeah, I agree. I think those are never things that you want to have happen to your voters, right? The ballot shortages, lines, in a big election, in large elections, large turnout elections, there's certainly the possibility for lines sometimes, particularly given the fact that in general, in polling places, people show up first thing in the morning, and then at lunchtime and dinner time or after work, after the work hours. So there's always a little bit of planning that goes into the process there, making sure that we are fully staffed and ready to handle lines at certain times of the day. But frankly, I think those are concerns that we should all be dealing with as election officials in the coming months as we're getting ready for August and November.
Now, I was going to bring up the point about the fact that might be a Georgia problem and not a Michigan problem. Do you know off the top of your head, and I might be asking a little tough question here, do you know off the top of your head whether or not they're structured fundamentally different than what Michigan might be structured under Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson?
No, I don't know off the top of my head. I do know the Secretary of State there obviously is the chief election officer, and that's the case in most states. I do know also that a large number of counties in Georgia got new election equipment, and this was the first election that equipment was utilized in. And that's a huge factor too. I mean, that's always tough when you're implementing a new system. You want to make sure that the rollout is such that it's done gradually and done in a way that ultimately doesn't affect voters, right? The goal is that a voter should never know whether it's a new system or not. I mean, those are things that fundamentally the customer experience shouldn't be changing just because we got new election equipment, basically.
And around Ottawa County, that's already been taken care of in the sense that it was, I want to say 4 years ago when the new election equipment started being rolled out in these parts.
Yeah, we did it in early 2017. So we had a small May election that year. We had a small August election, which was a primary for a couple of cities. So and then a city election in November, which is a little larger. And so we kind of ramped up to the 2018 cycle, which was obviously the gubernatorial cycle, a little bit bigger of an election. So this is the first presidential election that we're using new equipment in. But, I feel like it's fairly well broken in at this point. And I think another important factor in line management, especially this year during challenging times, is the fact that, we have the option for folks to participate by absentee ballot. And we encourage that to the extent that it would, both be beneficial for a voter who doesn't feel like coming out into the polling place, but also beneficial in the sense that it helps our lines. It helps our precinct management run more smoothly. So that's a positive thing as well.
If you have a question for Ottawa County Clerk Justin Roebuck, he'll be happy to take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Now, let's talk about absentee ballots and the mailing of absentee ballots. The Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, says that her office wants to do it on a statewide basis, but apparently the counties have the option of doing it their own, and Ottawa County is going that particular route. Please explain.
Yeah, essentially the Secretary of State early on, once this mailing statewide had commenced, the Secretary of State did give communities the option to mail their own voters. And if they chose not to do that, then the Secretary planned to do that instead. Ottawa County has actually had this process in the works prior to our knowledge of the state's mailing of registered voters. And it really came out of the May 5th election, where we were really concerned with the state did conduct a mailing. The timing of that mailing was very challenging. It left our local clerks with a very minimal opportunity to process a whole lot of voter applications. We had over 2,000 ballots returned by voters after the election. And that was really a timing issue. Frankly, it was because the applications went out so late that voters did not have enough time to turn around, mail the application back, receive a ballot, fill the ballot out, mail that back until after the election. So we saw some of those challenges on the horizon and decided that, in conjunction with our local clerks, we needed to take some proactive action on behalf of our voters. So that mailing is going out next week. Voters can expect to see that in their mailbox. It is from Ottawa County, but it would be returned to your local clerk, and your local clerk's address information is on the return address. And, we hope to, just encourage voters, whatever way they decide to participate, whether it's absentee or in person. We are doing our very best to prepare for this election cycle and make sure that you're safe and taken care of.
This mailing would be for the August 4th primary, correct?
Yep, the mailing is actually for the August 4 and November 3 election. So there's going to be two options on the application, whether a voter wants one just for August or August and November. They can choose, or just for November, frankly. So I guess there's three options. They can choose either or both elections that they'd like to receive a ballot for.
Again, if you have a question for Justin Roebuck, you'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450, 395-1450. I can hear some of you saying, hey, wait a minute, expense. Are we adding some more expenses to the clerk and register of deeds budget because we got to send this special mailing out?
Yeah. So the mailing was done at a pretty reasonable expense. Actually, it's about, we have 208,000 registered voters in Ottawa County. And we conducted this mailing at about 22 cents per voter. So that equals out to under $50,000. But the state is actually picking up the cost of this mailing as a part of the statewide effort to reach every voter with an application. So there's no direct cost to Ottawa County taxpayers. Certainly it is taxpayer funded. It's funded through the CARES Act, which is $11.2 million designated to the state of Michigan specifically for election-related issues surrounding COVID. And so Secretary Benson's office is utilizing some of those dollars to conduct this mailing.
395-1450 if you have a question for Ottawa County Clerk and Register of Deeds, Justin Roebuck. Let me backtrack for a moment to our beginning part of the discussion about the situation in Georgia. West Virginia also had an election as well. I want to bring that point up in just a moment, but I do have a phone call that would like to join in the conversation. Good morning. You're on the line with Ottawa County Clerk and Register of Deeds, Justin Roebuck.
When are those applications for those ballots going to be mailed out?
Yeah, great question. So they are going to be mailed out today and tomorrow, actually. So voters will start receiving those, I would guess, within the next couple of days. Obviously, probably this weekend and early next week, you'll have an application. The ballots themselves will not be on hand yet until the 20th of June. Which is the federal deadline. We have to receive ballots and have those available for voters and for military and overseas voters in particular that early.
Hey, what is the status of the lawsuit against the Secretary of State about purging the voter rolls of deceased and ineligible voters?
I know there was a lawsuit filed just this past week against the Secretary of State in a few counties. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
There was a group essentially alleging that there were too many voters on the voter rolls, and I think a lawsuit was filed against, I want to say 14 or 16 county clerks, and as well as the Secretary of State. So I'm not sure the exact status of that, but I think it is interesting to point out that one of the things we are doing with this mailing is a process that is looking at our voter rolls. We've run this mailing through what we call the National Change of Address list at the post office. So that's matches our voter data against records that the post office has of any voters who have moved. And we actually were able to set aside several thousand voters in Ottawa County that will not get this mailing because the post office has record that they have moved. And so that begins a process where we take that data of those voters, and then we have to follow the federal law. Federal law requires we can't just cancel automatically. There may be a mistake in there, and so we want to make sure that we give the voter due notice. But we do have to notice those voters that we've received some reliable information that they've moved. So interestingly enough, this mailing process this year is a great impetus to make sure that we have the best, most accurate, cleanest voter rolls. And that's something that is really the local clerk responsibility. There are a number of ways that we do that in Michigan. For example, the county's responsibility there is to send death records and notice of deaths within the county to every local clerk. The list is purged of those people. The Secretary of State also has access to the Social Security Administration's death list, and our records are purged on a monthly basis at the Secretary of State level. So this, it's amazing to me. There's 7.4 million individual records. Those records are changing every single day. People are moving. Unfortunately, people are passing away. There are things, new people coming on, some people falling off. And it is a constant vigilance that we need to have in making sure we have the best rolls.
Okay. Appreciate the call. Thank you. 395-1450, 395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with Ottawa County Clerk and Register of Deeds, Justin Roebuck.
Hi. The last primary election, we got our absentee ballots and we voted. And what I found was strange was that, and I'm not sure whether we got the ballot in before the primary, but it ended up that most of the people on the primary had already dropped out of the election. So if you voted for someone on there, I mean, they were gone by the time of the primary. Now, I don't know whether it was because the primary, ballot had to be in, before, but it seems like, boy, that's strange.
Great question. That is definitely always a struggle we have, particularly in the presidential preference primaries, which I'm assuming you're referring to the March primary. because you're right. We have deadlines that we have to make according to federal law. One of those is that ballots have to be on hand 45 days prior to an election, so that military and overseas voters have an ability to cast a ballot by absentee. So that's a federal law. But 45 days, I mean, we have to build in all of that time for programming and testing and proofing the ballots, as well as getting them printed. So we're looking at, again, deadlines that are set in state law for candidates to be certified on the ballot. And they're actually, the window of time elapsed. December 13 was the last day that a candidate could pull out of the Michigan ballot and have their name removed from the Michigan ballot for the March election. So particularly in these presidential primaries, because the race is so fluid, right? That candidates are joining and dropping out based on fundraising and polling numbers. And by the time we actually get to the election, unfortunately for voters, a lot of those people are now, no longer participating in the election. So great question. And that is kind of the logistics that go behind that. We have state deadlines that we have to follow, and that's because of the time that it takes to produce the ballot.
Thank you. And remind us about how you can prevent frauds on title. I did try to contact your website, and it crashed or something.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So if you go to our website, it should be. I was on it this morning. I think it's up and running right now, but it's miOttawa.org /ROD for Register of Deeds. And there is a link there on that page that you can sign up for what we call Property Fraud Alert. And essentially that service, basically, it's a quick sign up. It's totally free. And they will send you either an email, a text message, or even a phone call if any property records get recorded in your name. So if your name is on any documents that come through our office, that gets flagged, and you get a text message or a phone call from us or an email just letting you know, and making sure that you can kind of stay up on what's happening on your property records.
Thank you. Good service. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call. 395-1450, 395-1450. I do want to bring up one more point before we take our break, Justin. And the CBS News, when they reported on the Georgia situation and, West Virginia as well, they said concerns about the November election were possible during yesterday's situations in Georgia, especially. It's almost as if they were saying what we're going to see in November is what happened yesterday in Georgia and West Virginia. That might be, to me, it's a little bit of a stretch, and probably as you are more closer to the elections process than I am, that might be a little bit of a stretch saying what happened yesterday is a preview of maybe things to come in November.
I certainly hope not. That's for sure. I mean, I think, all we can do as election officials is learn from the situations and learn from mistakes and challenges. I certainly understand this is an extremely challenging year for all of us. And, particularly on the elections front, we have concerns with not having enough election workers. A lot of our workers are in an at-risk category for COVID-19, of course. Over 74% of election workers in Michigan are over the age of 60. We have polling location concerns with some venues not able to service our clerks and our voters in August. But overall, I think, we have seen amazing local clerks and county clerks across the state coming together and just kind of stepping up to the challenges. And I think all we can do is be as prepared as possible for worst case scenarios. And I certainly hope that in the case of Georgia and here in Michigan as well, that we, we're able to kind of navigate this a little more smoothly than what happened yesterday.
Well, it looks as if operations will start to gradually get back to normal with the Ottawa County government and the Ottawa County Clerks and Register of Deeds office. Briefly, tell us exactly what will be available in person and what will have to still be done virtually or via the telephone.
Yeah, sure. So absolutely. We are, excited to see our customers. It's been quite a while, and in a lot of cases, we've certainly been open for appointments, emergency appointments, and so forth in the interim time. But we're essentially appointments only beginning on June 15. So really, anybody with an anybody with a service can get an appointment for any service we have. There's still a lot that you can do online and through the mail as well. So don't feel like you have to come and see us, but we do want you to feel comfortable and safe when you are there. And so this appointment structure kind of allows us to keep the appropriate distancing in the office, make sure that you've got a personal appointment when you get there, you've got a clean space, and we'll definitely get you taken care of. We're looking forward to seeing our customers. And again, on our website, you can find out all the details for how you go and schedule those appointments and what you can do online as well. So,
and not only for the clerk's office and the Register of Deeds office, but also for the courts in not only Grand Haven, but
yes.
Howland and Hudsonville as well. And we'll put a link, by the way, to the County Clerk and Register of Deeds page, which is myottawa.org is the website. We'll put a link when we put the podcast of this particular conversation on our website at WHTC.com, and that will be a little bit later on this morning. And we'll also put the video that we're having with Justin Roebuck, a link to that a little bit later on today as well on the website. Justin Roebuck, Ottawa County Clerk and Register of Deeds, we appreciate your time joining us this morning on Talk of the Town, and we look forward to chatting with you again next month.
Definitely. Great to be with you, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is Justin Roebuck, the Register of Deeds and the County Clerk for Ottawa County here on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC. Coming up, it is CBS News with Deborah Rodriguez and WHTC News with Peg McNichol, followed by some open line time on Talk of the Town. We'll have Patty Vandenberg, what's new around Holland at the bottom of the hour, and then we'll be chatting with Ottawa County Sheriff's Lieutenant Designate Eric Westbier with the Marine Unit. We'll talk about boating and water safety coming up in the next hour on Talk of the Town.